everybody, I'm so glad that you're back for day 2 of We Are Family Camp. I hope you are having the best time with your family. I have loved getting to see some of your pictures and some of the projects that you've made. I cannot wait to see more. Send me all your stuff. I want to hear about your scavenger hunt and your science experiment. Did you cook anything yummy yet? How did your nighttime adventures go? Did you do a glow dance party? I cannot wait to see all the fun things that you and your family will do together. So be sure and share them. Now, we're going back to the Bible today for more great stories. Do you remember the Bible is those 66 books put together into 2 sections, the Old Testament and the New Testament. Our first story today comes from the Old Testament, the time before Jesus, and it comes from the book of Exodus, chapter 2. Now, this story takes us way back to a person that you may have heard of before, a baby who was born to the Hebrews. Hang on just a second. I want to tell you the story in a little bit different way today. Hello, my name is Miriam, and my family is about to have a new baby. You might think that would be an exciting thing, but really, I am so afraid. You see, the Egyptian king has made a very horrible law right now. And my people, the Hebrew people, we have to obey it. You see, the Hebrew people are slaves, and the Egyptian Pharaoh has made a law that all Hebrew baby boys must be thrown into the river. You see, he's afraid that we're going to rise up and become even more powerful and take over his kingdom, so he wants to kill all the baby boys. My family has been praying that we will have a girl, but Mama says we just have to leave it in God's hands. Well, fast forward a few days, and my little brother was born. What were we going to do? My mom saw the baby, we saw the baby, and we loved him so. He was an amazing baby. There was no way that we could throw him in the river. So Mama said she had a plan. She started to just hide him in our home. And for the first few months, that worked okay. You see, babies, when they're tiny, are very quiet. So when he would cry, we would pick him up and comfort him and keep him very quiet. But as the weeks went on, his cries started getting louder and louder. My mom liked to go on walks, and each day when he would go down for his afternoon nap, she'd ask me, Miriam, his sister, to watch him for a few minutes at the house. And she'd always say, Miriam, don't let him get loud. Keep him quiet. We have to keep him hidden. And she would go out on her walks, and on these walks, she would pray. She would ask God to help her know what was it that she should do. But she always said, I cannot put my baby in the river. Well, one day she came home from her walk, and she had a different look on her face. It was like she'd had an idea, and now she had hope. My brother and I didn't understand exactly what was going on, but our mom came home with a basket, and it was made of papyrus reeds that she had picked from along the river. Now, it wasn't just like this basket, because this one has holes. Mama's basket was much tighter, and it had a lid. And then my dad came home and brought some tar, and they used the pitch, to fill in all the holes. My brother and I asked, what are you doing, Mom? And she said, I'm making a waterproof basket. This basket is not going to let any water inside. My brother and I looked at one another and wondered, what is she talking about? She said, well, I've been saying all along, I'm not going to put my baby in the river. God has said, that's exactly what I want you to do. You see, my mom had come up with a plan. She had seen the Pharaoh's daughter, the princess, out taking a bath in the river each day on her walks. So as she walked along the river, an idea had come to her. What if I put my baby in a basket and the princess could find him? Maybe she will have compassion on the baby and save his life. So Mom said she had a special job for me. I was going to be the one to watch the basket. And so when the time came, my mom put my baby brother in the basket, and we walked down to the river. We gently placed him in the reeds and watched as he floated away. My job was to stand there and keep watch. I was so scared. What if something happened? What if the princess didn't get the baby? But there came the princess and all of her helpers. And then My baby brother cried. It was great. He cried, and the princess heard him. She asked for one of her helpers to go and get him and bring that basket to her. Imagine her surprise when she opened the basket and saw that a baby was inside, a Hebrew baby. She realized that it must have been one of the moms trying to save the baby, and she had compassion on him. I quickly ran and said, "Hi, would you like me to find someone who could help take care of that baby for you?" And the princess said yes. And I turned around and ran home and got my mom. My mom came back with me, and the princess said, "Here, take care of the baby, raise him while he's young, and I will even pay you to do that. And then when he's older, you can return him to me." Wow, my mom was going to get to raise our brother after all. And so he came home with us, and he was there. God had worked out all the details. It was amazing. And when my brother was older, my mom returned him to the Pharaoh's daughter. And there, the Pharaoh's daughter named him Moses, because that name means, "I drew him up out of water." So my brother Moses had an adopted mom. His mom, the Pharaoh's daughter, the princess, was able to raise him in the palace, and God was going to use that to let my brother be a part of an even bigger story for our people. Wow, I'm back. That was quite a story, wasn't it? You know, God used Miriam to serve her family. Miriam was willing to put herself at risk to help take care of her little brother, and God used her willingness in a big way. And God had a plan that allowed Moses to be a part of his even bigger plan for all of God's people. You see, you and I can serve in our families too. Now, often our siblings' lives are not in danger, and we are so glad. But there are all kinds of ways we can serve at home. Maybe you could help watch a younger brother or sister for a little while, or maybe you could help with some chores. You could help put away your clothes, or help set the table, or clean up after dinner. Maybe you could even take out the trash. This week, I hope you'll think of some ways that you could serve in your family, because serving one another is an important example that we have throughout the Bible. It's important as we move to our Jesus story for the day. I want you to be thinking about this idea of serving, because Jesus gave us lots of examples of serving. Now, before we go to our next story, let's stop and think about our memory verses for the day.
Hi everyone, I hope you're having a great time so far at camp. This is day 2, and for our Bible verse for our preschoolers for day 2 comes from Ephesians 6:1. So the motions for this is going to go we help. The motions for help is a thumbs up and your hand's going to be flat. It goes help. So we help and our hand motions for family like we did yesterday. Put your fingers together like this and go around. So it goes we help our families. So the verse for day 2 for our kids is going to relate back to this tree you see behind me. The verse comes from Colossians 2 verse 7. Let your roots grow down into him and let your lives be built on him. Then your faith will grow strong in the truth you are taught, and you'll overflow with thankfulness. So our motions for this is going to go let your roots grow down into him and let your lives be built onto him. So let your roots, like you're sprouting roots with your fingers, and let your lives be built, like you're building blocks on top of him. Then your faith will grow strong in the truth you were taught. Truth goes like this. So it goes, then your faith will grow strong in the truth you were taught. So you're just gonna get your pointer finger and you put it on your chin and just push it out. And you'll overflow with thankfulness. So let's put it all together. Let your roots grow down into him and let your lives be built on him. Then your faith will grow strong in the truth you were taught, and you'll overflow with thankfulness. So our theme verse for everybody on day 2, you may see it behind me. It comes from 1 Corinthians 16:14. It goes, let all that you do be done in love. For our motions for this is going to be let all that you do be done in love. So you're just going to bring it all around and connect it with love. So let all that you do be done in love.
Those are some great verses. I hope you'll keep learning and practicing them, and remember the ones that you did yesterday too. I love the verse that says, let all that you do be done in love. You know, that sounds like Jesus. And so before we move to our Jesus story, let's think about our family chant for a second and get up and moving. So, are you ready? Stand to your feet. And give me an F. F. Give me an A. A. Give me an M. M. Give me an I. I. Give me an L. L. Give me a Y. Y. What's it spell? Family. That's what we're talking about. Family. So yesterday we heard about the Jesus part of the story when he was very young. Today we're going to move to his life as he grew up and began to teach and heal and help and serve. So let's listen and find out what all Jesus wants to teach us today. This story is from the New Testament. Jesus began to teach people and tell them stories about living life with God. Wherever he went, people came to listen to him because his stories were different. He was a different kind of teacher. You see, when Jesus told stories, he was telling people about God, what he's like and what he loves, and about themselves, who they were and what they were made for. One day, Jesus sat on a hillside and a crowd gathered around him. He began to talk to them about their lives. Look at the little birds and the beautiful flowers around us, he said. Do you think they worry about what to wear or what to eat? Of course not, and neither should you, because God made you and he loves you, and he knows just what you need. So don't worry about tomorrow. Be thankful for what you have today. Now, sometimes we're sad, and sometimes other people hurt us, and sometimes we don't have the things we need, Jesus told them. But when life is hard, God is still with you. And when we feel sad or broken, God is close to us. He does not leave us no matter what happens, and he will never stop loving us. If you love me, Jesus explained, and love God, then people will notice that your life looks different. You'll be like a bright light shining out to everyone, a light that everyone can see, a light to show people the way. You'll be like a city on a hill that everyone can see, and when you do good things, people will see that God is good. When you are loving and kind, when you forgive others and make peace, you are living the way God made you to live. Remember the rules that God gave to Moses, Jesus asked them? I want you to go even further, to love more. It's easy to love your friends, but I want you to love your enemies and pray for people who hurt you and forgive when someone hurts you. Don't hurt them back. Be kind. If someone asks you for something, give it to them. If someone takes your shirt, give them your jacket too. Show extravagant, surprising love. That's what God made you for. It isn't easy to live this way. By ourselves, it'd be impossible, but we have God as our Father, and he loves to help us. And when you pray, this is how you can talk to God. Jesus told them, Our Father in the heavens, your name is holy. May your kingdom come soon, and may what you be done here on earth, just like it is in heaven. Give us just what we need for today. Forgive us when we do things wrong, and help us to forgive other people. Help us always to choose good and keep us safe from evil. You are the King of everything forever. All power everywhere belongs to you, and we will worship you always. Amen. One night, Jesus and his friends were crossing a lake in a boat. Jesus had spent all day helping people, and he was very tired. Very soon, he fell asleep. As Jesus was sleeping, a furious storm came across the lake. Blustery winds and fierce waves threw the small boat around, and Jesus' friends were terrified. They were sure their boat was going to sink. Wake up, Jesus shouted, save us, we're going to drown. Jesus opened his eyes and looked at their faces. Why are you so afraid, he asked. You see, he knew they were perfectly safe with him, but his friends weren't feeling safe at all. All they could see was the storm swirling all around them. So Jesus stood up and spoke to the wind and the waves. Be quiet. And that was all he said, and the wind and the waves listened. They knew who he was, and everything was calm again. The disciples were amazed and frightened too. After all, a storm had listened to Jesus and obeyed? Who is he, they asked themselves. Even the wind and the waves do what he says. The disciples were still learning who Jesus was. Everywhere Jesus went, sick people came to see him because they knew that he cared for them and could help them. One day, Jesus was talking to a big crowd of people, and a man named Jairus came up to him full of worry. My little girl is very, very sick, he said. Please come and help her. I know you can make her well again. Jesus wanted to help, so he went with Jairus to his house. As they pushed through the busy crowds, a woman saw Jesus. She had been very sick for a long time and had heard that Jesus could help. If I can just touch his clothing, she thought, I'll be better. Reaching through the crowd, she touched the edge of Jesus' cloak and immediately knew that she was well again. Jesus stopped. Who touched me? He asked. We're in the middle of a crowd, said the disciples. Everyone's touching you. It was me, said the woman, and Jesus smiled at her. You don't need to be afraid. You are healed because you believed. At that very moment, some men arrived from Jairus' house. It's too late, they said. Don't bother to come anymore. But Jesus said to Jairus, don't be afraid, trust me. Jesus took Peter, James, and John into Jairus' house and took the little girl's hand and said, Little girl, get up. The little girl opened her eyes and stood up. She was completely well. She's hungry, said Jesus. Give her something to eat. This was the happiest day of Jairus' life because he believed in Jesus. His daughter had been healed. As they were leaving Jairus' house, two blind men started to follow him. Help us, Jesus, they called. And Jesus stopped. Do you think I can heal you? He asked. Yes, Lord, they said. So Jesus touched their eyes. Because you believed, you won't be blind anymore, he told them. The two men opened their eyes. They could see. Jesus had healed them. Everywhere he went, Jesus loved the people that no one else loved, and he cared for people that no one else would go near. Some people had a disease so horrible they were sent to live outside the city, away from everyone else, and people were afraid of them. But not Jesus. Jesus loved them just as much as he loved everyone else, and he healed them when they asked him to. He gave them new life. More and more people heard about Jesus and the amazing, wonderful things he was doing, and more people came to ask for his help. One day, Jesus was at a house and a huge crowd gathered around him. A group of friends arrived carrying a man who couldn't walk. They wanted Jesus to help their friend, but the house was so full of people it was impossible to get in. They were desperate to see Jesus because they knew he was the only one who could help, so they came up with an idea. They climbed to the top of the house, smashed a hole in the roof, and lowered their friend right down, right in front of Jesus. Jesus looked at the man on the mat and said, All the things you have done wrong are forgiven. And because your friends had faith, you are healed. Now get up and walk again. And the man did. He stood up, picked up his mat, and walked home, full of thanks. Jesus knew it was far more important to be forgiven than healed, but he also knew the man wanted to walk again. Because he loved the man, he did both. Jesus forgave him and healed him. Jesus and his disciples had been traveling and teaching and helping and healing. And one day they needed some rest. They set off across the lake looking for a quiet spot. And when they reached the other side of the lake, they saw a huge crowd of people waiting for them. Thousands of people. Jesus could have turned around or told everyone to go on home, but he looked out at them and loved them and wanted to help them. Jesus spent the whole day teaching them. And when evening came, everyone was hungry. There's no food here, the disciples said to Jesus. Let's send everyone home. Why don't you feed them, Jesus said. That's impossible, they said. How on earth can we buy food for all these people? Well, show me what you have, Jesus said. Well, all they had was one small meal from a small boy, just 5 loaves and 2 fish. One tiny picnic for such an enormous crowd? How ridiculous. But Jesus gave thanks to God and broke the bread and the fish into pieces and handed the food out to the disciples and told them to pass it out. They went off thinking, this isn't nearly enough. Any minute now we'll run out. But they didn't. No matter how much food they gave away, they still had more. And everyone ate until they couldn't manage another crumb. When the disciples picked up all that was left, they had 12 basketfuls. And Jesus had given the people even more than they needed. Night was coming, so Jesus sent the crowds home, and he went up to the hills to pray. Phew! That was a lot of story, wasn't it? But I didn't want you to miss any of it. You see, Jesus' life was filled with acts of service, ways that he cared and loved for people. He demonstrated his love in so many of those stories, from caring about the disciples and helping them in a storm, to healing people whose bodies had been broken or who had never been whole before. He forgave people's sins, he met their needs, and he loved them. He loved all of them. Today, as we think about serving in our families and serving in our world, I want you to think about the example of Jesus. Jesus always had time to stop and care for people. He took the time to do the task that was needed. So today, Think of the things that are needed in your family as you serve at home, and begin to think about the things that are needed in our world. There are so many ways that you can get involved, and Jesus is asking Christians to do that. We can serve and help others to see Him through us in our world. In your packet is a mission page. It's filled with ideas that you can use to go and do acts of service in our world. They're not hard, but they require intentionality. So I challenge you to take that on with your families today and see what you can do to help be like Jesus and let all that you do be done in love. I'll see you tomorrow.